Guess you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit, and now here's your host, Rich Barris.
And here I am. Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. Look, little show announcement, rolling right into what we're talking about here. So it's like, even during no election season, the content just keeps kind of rolling in. So I think what we decided to do here is scale back private polling and do more with the show and even more episodes, but also just more public polling with whatever we're going to call the new public polling. Even, and a lot of people don't want to see it rebranded, but let's just keep calling it the Public Polling Project because really it ramps up during the election season, and sometimes it tapers off, falls off. Other times it does not. So in this case, it doesn't seem to have. So, I mean, of course, it tapered off a little bit, but it's still at the point where it would be preventing me to do more shows. And there's just so much content coming out that really is related to the things that I wanted to talk about this year, which, of course, is this basic stalemate that we've reached with American political discourse, which you're either... I don't even want to call it MAGA. You're either against the uniparty or you're not. And you're either extremely concerned with the lies that the cartel, the information side of the cartel pushes for the administrative side of the cartel, and you're not, or you're just not in it yet. You're not there yet. You don't see it yet. So, when we talk about this stuff like illusory truth effect and cognitive dissonance and all of this that goes into how people inform their opinions on issues and their own belief systems that they see the world through, that they hear stories through. All right. So these belief systems are a filter. And when they're told by MSNBC, there's Russia collusion, right? Or when they're told, a young teenager went across state lines with an assault rifle, right, Geraldo? To stir up trouble, and then he's found not guilty by, a jury of his peers. Or when we talk about somebody being arrested in the District of Columbia, what is the likelihood of them being found guilty, prosecuted successfully, or not, even though federal convictions are like 99% in the District of Columbia? If they represent a certain view or a certain belief system, then they're likely to get off, right? So all of this material just keeps rolling in, and 2 hours for a show, I almost feel like I'd rather do 5 single-hour blocks throughout the week than 2 4-hour blocks throughout the week, or maybe even more. I mean, honestly. So that's something we're going to do. We'll let you know when it is. Maybe we'll start with 3 2-hour blocks. We haven't decided yet, but we have decided that it's, the polling for the Public Polling Project, a limited number of clients, which isn't going to make clients happy, but a limited number of clients is the way we're going to go forward here. And you'll notice that there'll be a lot more investment in the show as the year goes on. That's the game plan going forward. All right. Speaking of public polling, all right, normally we have the don't mention him rule, but we have to bring this up, even though this has nothing to do with what I want to talk about today. You may have seen the report that the new head honcho over at ABC is looking to put 5-turd fake on the chopping block. It has never been profitable. Well, again, this goes to what we're talking about. No business in the United States of America is is run and continuously without creating or generating a profit. If a business is in the red, and I'm talking about millions of dollars each year in the red, never turned a profit, then there must be some alternative reason that people have this business up and running, right? To blacklist this pollster, to degrade this pollster, to put a value on another pollster's worth, right? For a narrative purpose. This super secret formula that goes into it that nobody's allowed to see, much like the so-called model, which is, I've said to you over and over again, a glorified polling operation. Now, I wonder, I can't help but to wonder, because I will tell you this, a couple of weeks ago, I got a call from a well-known journalist from a well-known corporate media newspaper, and I was a little bit stunned by the angling of his questions. I thought it was going to result in a hit piece. I said, well, this is great. All publicity is good publicity. So if it's a hit piece, it's a hit piece. But it wasn't, or at least it hasn't turned into one yet. Instead, it was, what value does this guy really have for the polling industry? Did polls do a better job this year? Where did they fall short? I mean, they were like legitimate questions from an outlet. Trust me, you would not expect to ask legitimate questions of someone like me. You would have expected it to just be a hit piece. Instead, it was, you're a well-known critic. He has banned you. Does this guy hurt your industry? I kind of feel like putting this all together in my head, looking back, I can't help but to wonder if he knew this was going on weeks ago and that somebody's head has got to be on the chopping block in order to kind of reinstate the credibility, in an attempt to get their credibility back, because some polls did do well. Look, the ABC News Washington Post poll, at least with the generic ballot, they bombed in the states. Biden plus 17 in Wisconsin. They bombed in the states in 2020, but they've always had a pretty good off-year generic ballot. They were right there with us, between 2 and 6. For the Republican Party, we were 2 and 5. Right? That was our last one was 2. Second to last one was 2, 2.3, and the other one was 4.9, something like that, really close to 5. So they did a decent job. I can't help but to wonder if they're trying to salvage people like that and put this guy on the chopping block. So we'll see. But that's not really what I want to talk about, but I had to notice it. And I will just say this. If 5 turd fake goes on the chopping block, it will be the best thing that could possibly happen to the polling industry and the faith that we can earn back from the public, the faith and the trust that pollsters can earn back. Because as of right now, all he serves, this function, is to push everybody in their respective corners. And it's just more of the same of this hive mind mentality. It's more of the same. This is something you can quantify. So you shouldn't have some poser, which is what he is. He's a poser, pretending to be an authority over an industry, especially if it's one that's struggling and so important, like public polling is. Congressmen, senators, elected leaders of all types look to public polls to guide them on what they think the public is doing. Where is the public on this issue? Should I support this bill or not? Campaigns look to them for obvious reasons. And news consumers look to them to see the status of races. That is a toxic, like to borrow one of their words, his role is a toxic role. That entire website has played a negative role in this industry since David Plouffe first started leaking him polling data, which he pushed off deceptively as his own guru-like analysis. All he was doing was blogging about polling data that Obama's guy was leaking to him. That's how he made his name. There was no super secret formula that went into it. He simply trusted David Plouffe that the numbers were right. And my 11-year-old daughter could have called that election. McCain was one of the worst candidates in modern times. We're in the middle of a deeply unpopular war. This guy's a war hawk. The economy collapses. And this tool goes to a microphone and says, the economy was never my strongest issue. This is one of the worst candidates in modern history. And Barack Obama was one of, if not the most historic candidate in modern presidential politics. The first African-American presidential nominee who has a real shot of winning. Large percentages of Republicans are, could pull the lever and say, I want to give this guy a shot because I want to reach this milestone in our history. I want to give him the chance and the benefit of the doubt. Hopefully he doesn't govern like an ideologue, which he did, which is why he became the first reelected president in history to be reelected with smaller support than he initially had when he was elected. That's why he lost Indiana and North Carolina. All right, so, and damn near lost Florida. Although he still crushed Mitt Romney in some of the states that are now solidly Trumpian states. Iowa, Ohio, which some Republicans still struggle in. People should remember. All right, so with that in mind, the best thing that could happen to the polling industry would be to axe that guy. His entire operation. Just get rid of it. Just get rid of it. It doesn't make any money. You can only be justifying keeping that website alive by you thinking he serves a narrative for your preferred political party. And for those who point out times he was actually right, I would say this: a broken clock is right twice a day. If you're constantly saying this party's going to win, this party's going to win, this party's going to win, it's a rout, it's a rout, it's a rout. Eventually, because of the nature of American politics, it's a pendulum. It swings back and forth, at least typically. We've had periods of dominance like the Democrats dominated throughout the 20th century for most of the 20th century, the Roosevelt era on, especially in, you have almost 40-year period between the last Republican-controlled Congress and the Republican Revolution of 1994. But for the most part, we still see swings with governors, still see swings with presidents. Democrats had a rough go of it for a while, winning the presidency. They had a very difficult time. They were only able to do it once with Jimmy Carter. And then until Bill Clinton, which was still not a great boon for them because Bill Clinton was always elected with less than a majority. A third-party candidate took what was otherwise viewed, and rightfully so, as right-leaning voters away from the Republican Party. Now, I'm not saying it's wrong, by the way. Just so don't misinterpret what I'm saying. I would have supported Ross Perot over Herbert Walker Bush, personally, myself, right? Absolutely. So don't misinterpret what I'm saying. I'm just, I'm just saying that is the reality of it. And Perot's coalition faded away because of the decisions that Republicans made until George W. Bush again, who was able to bring at least enough of them out to win the day, to win states like Iowa, to come damn close in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, but, to pull it off. New Mexico and Colorado were battleground states against Al Gore, and even John Kerry. Nevada, right? So, all right, moving forward here. And by the way, a ton of them in Florida, which he won by a pretty significant margin the second time around. But then he blew it, and Republicans blew it. Mitt Romney, about 4 million votes shy in certain areas to even have a prayer in the Electoral College. Pathetic. All those voters, by the way. All right, so today we got to talk about the latest on Russia and what's going on, the Russia collusion hoax, because it is a hoax. And yet, so-called highly educated people, no matter what develops in this story, they're always going to believe that Donald Trump was a traitor who colluded with Vladimir Putin and stole the 2016 election. The current leader of the Democratic Party in the House of Representatives, Hakeem Jeffries, is another historic landmark for them, historic milestone, was a collusion pusher. Their committee chairs, their top surrogates all throughout the Trump administration were collusion pushers, who, by the way, took a great deal of money from Ukrainian oligarchs and arms dealers. And now we're finding out even worse. I'm just going to go ahead and play some of these clips. I'm going to do it in an order, though, because I do feel that some of them don't tell the entire truth. And we're basically going to look at this story together, talking about this hive mind impact, right, in relation to this story. And then we're going to roll with that into some of what we were talking about last week with, now Adam Schiff just took to Twitter yesterday, basically saying that this is payback. He has been thrown off of the committee, the House Intelligence Committee, by Kevin McCarthy because it's political retribution, along with Swalwell. So let's try to take this in the correct order. Let's first go to MSNBC. All right. With, by the way, who do they choose? You may recognize this face. Notice the reporter they choose to bring on to talk about this breaking news. It's incredible. The fact they even let this guy on to break this story, whether it's his story or not, shows you how much they have faith in things like, cognitive dissonance, and they have faith that the hive mind that they have built is substantial, is strong. They have faith that no matter what, certain people, i.e., their key viewers, simply cannot be convinced that they were lied to, no matter what. They cannot separate it from their worldview. So let's take the first take.
A former top FBI official in the Bureau's New York office has been arrested. 4 senior law enforcement sources say Charles McGonigal faces charges related to violating Russian sanctions and money laundering. Back with me are Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delaney and Frank Figluzzi, a national security analyst for us. Ken, McGonigal here is the former head of counterintelligence for the New York City office. He's due in federal court later today in Manhattan. What do we know and what more could we learn?
This is a massive and shocking case, Lindsay. We're still going through the details of this news release from the U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of New York. But McGonigal was arrested over the weekend, we're reporting, and he's facing 5 counts related to business dealings after he left the FBI in 2018 with a Russian oligarch named Oleg Deripaska, who he had some role in investigating while he was inside the FBI. So this is just a huge black eye, a whiff of corruption here with a former senior FBI official.
Unbelievable that they would choose Ken Delaney, even if it was his story to break. This is a man who routinely throughout the Trump administration went on camera, just like you just saw right now, and lied to your face. Routinely pushed disinformation from our own intelligence community, who was running essentially a dark art campaign against their own people. And what do I mean by that? I mean, these are the tactics the CIA and others will use when they're trying to stir up coups like they did in Ukraine in 2014, when they're trying to stir up coups in Iran and other places. They call it the dark arts. They used it on their own people to convince them, or at least a great deal of them, that their own president was a Russian traitor, again, who colluded with Vladimir Putin to steal the 2016 election. Ken Delaney is a key figure, as Matt Taibbi has pointed out, as leftists. Glenn Greenwald, also a leftist. Aaron Mate, also a leftist. Jimmy Dore, who I personally, my favorite. Well, I like them all. They all do different things. It's just Jimmy entertains me more. Personally, I just find him more entertaining. And the other ones are like hard news people. And in return for these leftists breaking with the pack and saying, Ken, you're lying about this. This is a lie. In return, they've been called enemies of the United States themselves. Russian stooges. Russian puppets. We all know. That's it. Aaron Mate is an asset. Glenn Greenwald is a Russian asset. Because they broke with the hive mind and told you Ken is a liar. Notice they left out some pretty key facts about who this man is. Let's go now to, and let's call right wing. There's where left wing take. Let's go now to the right wing take, as they'll call it. Very short. And then we're going to go to another one that I think explains it in more detail. And I think it's the right one to use because he's been on it for so long. But
one of the senior FBI agents in charge of the Trump collusion probe, he was working with Russia. Remember that? The agent's name is Charles McGonigal. That same guy has just been charged, in apparently collusion with Russia, a money laundering scheme with Russia. So that's a little bit shocking, right? A Russian oligarch gave this guy money. So this is the same FBI that is now conducting the investigation of Joe Biden.
You really can't make this stuff up. But in truth, and you're going to hear it in a second, what he was is a top former, he was a former top intel guy at the FBI. He fed a lot of information that went into the Steele dossier by the sources. We all knew this. Primarily one in particular, a Russian oligarch. This is where Steele was getting a lot of this information from and feeding it in. At this time, he's already gone, but of course they still have contacts at the FBI, right? You know, if you know it's coming from him, well, wow, Charles was the top guy here, must be credible. Or even if not, it's credible enough to get through, the channels at the FBI, to get all the way up to Jim Comey. We were just talking about John McCain, by the way. Another key role in this. As this guy's taking money from Russian oligarchs himself. This clip's a little bit longer, but I think it's important. It's John Solomon who's been on this, and I've been critical because I always thought John Solomon, would go on, and I don't know that it's Solomon's fault. I would more blame Hannity for this. It was the biggest platform he had, but for Solomon to go on Hannity all the time and give every one of his viewers on the right, Trump supporters, the impression that anything was ever going to happen to these people is just unbelievable. Notice what he's actually been charged with, folks. I mean, he hasn't really been charged, with what we are talking about here, which is a conspiracy to overthrow the president. That's what this really is. No, he's being charged with, basically foreign agent violations, right? And money laundering, right? Which is always intertwined. Now they got Paul Manafort, even though Paul Manafort was charged with crimes that everybody conducts or did conduct, at least back then, in Washington, D.C. Nobody gave a damn. The Podesta group, for instance. The revolving door there for Paul Manafort, according to what we heard from people there, it was a revolving door. Incredibly, they played both sides of the Ukraine issue. Let's hire Paul Manafort to, increase the image or at least ascertain the image of this side. Meanwhile, we're taking money on behalf of the other side to lobby the Clinton State Department. By the way, the brother would go on to be the chairman of her campaign for president, which funded this entire operation, which then made its way to the top of, the FBI, made it all the way to main justice. All right, but this guy's an important figure because it smacks all these periods in time that this guy bubbles to the surface. It smacks of this guy's a turncoat. This guy's 100% a turncoat. And nothing should have ever been taken as credible from him. But listen to the errors the FBI made in judgment with this man over the years. And again, remember, he is not being charged with what this really is. This was a disinformation campaign waged by the administrative intel state against a duly elected president to overthrow him. That's what really happened here. Let's roll it. This one's a little bit longer, but bear with me. It's important.
You said in the break he's like the Forrest Gump of the Russian collusion hoax. Will you tell our millions of listeners right now why this arrest of this FBI head of counterintelligence from New York, Charles McGonigal, is so potentially very significant?
Yeah, well, listen, Charles McGonigal is an FBI agent that sends the information that leads to the predication of the Crossfire Hurricane investigation, the bogus investigation into Russia-Trump collusion, which we now know didn't exist. He gives his information about Papadopoulos to an analyst. The analyst gives it to Pete Strzok. Pete Strzok writes a memo and opens up the entire investigation, and we know how that saga is. But he's dealing with a Russian oligarch who, by the way, was at the center of the allegations from Christopher Steele. But let's go through Oleg Deripaska. Oleg Deripaska is the Russian oligarch that this FBI agent McGonigal is accused of trying to surreptitiously help in violation of U.S. sanctions. He is a Forrest Gump-like figure. He keeps showing up in the U.S.-Russia spy games. In 2009, the FBI approaches him, even though he's on a sanctions list, and says, we'd like you to fund a rescue operation. You, Russian oligarch, who the government of the United States has accused of wrongdoing, we want you to go help find our missing FBI agent in Iran, a guy named Levinson, who was missing, and the CIA wouldn't help find him. So the FBI put together a rogue operation under Robert Mueller, in which Deripaska goes out and tries to find information through his Iranian connections. In 2015, he's the guy that's hiring Christopher Steele to find dirt on some of his rivals. A year later, Christopher Steele's putting Oleg Deripaska into his narrative, saying, well, maybe Oleg Deripaska is the guy working with Paul Manafort that sews the whole Russia collusion case together. We know that not to be true. The FBI then shows up at Oleg Deripaska's home in 2016 and asks him, is there any Russia collusion going on? He says, no, you can trust me, there's not. They ignored that advice. It turns out Oleg Deripaska was right. The FBI was wrong. In 2017, Mark Warner's people are on the phone with his lawyer, and Mark Warner himself is texting with Oleg Deripaska's lawyer, trying to get dirt on Donald Trump. So he shows up again. And not to add any more fun to this, but Hunter Biden even had a plan to make money off of Oleg Deripaska. He came up with an idea after his father gave a speech on aluminum wars around the world, and Oleg Deripaska was a big aluminum magnate, about how America could support Alcoa, the American aluminum maker. And Hunter Biden immediately turns around after that speech, which his father mentions Alcoa, and pitches himself to Alcoa saying, I'll dig up dirt on Oleg Deripaska, one of your foreign rivals, and send it to you, you pay me $80,000. So Democrats and the deep state have had this long, twisted relationship with Oleg Deripaska. He just keeps showing up.
Yeah, so this is really crazy. And this is the guy he has ties to, Deripaska, right? So, I mean, you really, oh, by the way, just got a note, just popped up. The voter file analysis, which we had issues with, it appears to have processed. So it'll be very interesting to see if any changes have been made since last year with the national voter file analysis. The inferences take a long time to run, but there was an issue with the database and things were put on hold. But for locals, it looks like it just finished. So it's coming. And after the show, I'll put it up. And then I'm going to write actually an article on locals article only, comparing it. All right. So that's a sidebar of this real quick. But it is, I'm reading some of the comments from you guys as this is going on. And it is, there is a lot of, you're right. There's a lot of this is rooted in we have a mental health problem in this country. From straight delusions. And we talk about illusory truth effect, to things, like projection, this is a serious problem. For years before I became so cynical, Laura always used to say, anything the media tries to project on you, anything, generally speaking, this would just not partisan in nature here. It's just true statement. I mean, we're looking at it right here, but anything, some of, the Democratic Party, definitely the establishment part of the Democratic Party, would, accuse somebody of, you could rest assured that that's what they were doing. So that's interesting, isn't it? Because here you have, and I would dare say, the Democratic Party right now is just the agent of the administrative state. I don't want to get into the trap of like labeling the party itself that. I think they're just the vehicle at this moment. You know, during the Patriot Act, the administrative state was very happy to use the Republican Party, and they were the vehicle back then for expanding the power of the police state, the Department of Homeland Security, the Patriot Act, right? All of this stuff. The war machine was marching. Now they use the Democratic Party to march the war machine, even though there are a lot of tools in the Republican Party who are happy to oblige them as well. There is very clearly this time a larger anti-war resistance to forever war. It's larger on the right than it is on the left now. We're talking about Jimmy Dore and others in the comments. You know, he's certainly part of that. Aaron Mate is certainly part of that. But they're outnumbered, vastly, vastly outnumbered. I know this because I'm a public opinion pollster. There are a lot more Republicans who are on an anti-war footing, take care of home first, make America great again first, right? They're more nationalist, whereas the Democratic Party is becoming the neoliberal, neocon blend foreign policy, and that makes them a target-rich or a target-rich environment or vehicle for the administrative state who believes in all of that, right? So, yeah, there are some idiot Republicans who support what's going on in Ukraine, which we'll obviously talk about more. But Laura was right to say, always was, that this is projection, because even the figures who pushed the collusion hoax, all right, are some of the most guilty of the things that they accused others of doing, right? So Hillary Clinton said Trump colluded with Putin when in fact she colluded with Ukraine, right? Adam Schiff, all the accusations he made when he was in fact the one taking money from oligarchs. We know this. I mean, he's rubbing elbows at arms dealing, with arms dealers at fundraisers. All right. So let's look at how some people responded there. First, you got to go to Trump and see how Trump responded. All right. And then I'll make it bigger. And this is what he said yesterday when this happened. The FBI sleazebag who was in charge of investigating me on Russiagate was just arrested for receiving money from, get this, Russia. These are the people I inherited from the corrupt FBI, including Comey and his crooked band of misfits and thugs. Now, the Gestapo may be even worse with the raid on Mar-a-Lago, the horrible and unconstitutional treatment of January 6 patriots, and the lack of action on Antifa, BLM, and the rest. Shameful, make America great again, right? But also, too, interesting to see how some of these people who did not fall for it, some of these people who did, they held the line, and when it was not easy to do it in their industry, okay? And we were talking about, it's not that I picked this particular one for any reason other than, she hasn't gotten a shout out yet, but I think it's critical to point out her role in combating this hoax, this disinformation campaign, this information war that they waged on you. I think her and her news outlet were critical to pushing back against this, to fighting it, to exposing it for what it was, along with others that we mentioned, right? But this is how, because we're going to move now into Adam Schiff, again, being so comfortable with how deluded the people who followed and believed him are still. They still haven't put it together. It didn't matter. Michael Sussman was indicted. He was let off by a jury ideologically corrupt. I mean, there's no other way to put it. There needs to be, like Barnes and I have been saying for years, after conducting voir dire all over the country, after building people down psychologically and building them back up in a profiles of people, why do people believe these things? How can this person hear the evidence of a case, the same evidence that this person hears, and yet this person doesn't see what this person sees? How could this be possible? So believe me when I tell you, you have a population in the District of Columbia, and even now it's definitely seeped into Nova, into Northern Virginia, That used to be the go-to, the safeguard. Well, this person can't get a fair trial, or this person, or maybe the prosecutor can't get a fair trial in the District of Columbia. We'll move it to Northern Virginia. We'll get a change of venue, and we'll move it to Northern Virginia. That's not even a safe bet anymore. But when you have literally greater than 95% of the population essentially being, to borrow my good friend Peter's term, ideologically possessed, like they are so ideological, and their minds are so distorted with, it worked with the information campaign. It's a war. It's an information war campaign. They're so distorted with it, they can't see the facts of the case. So they'll let Michael Sussman go while burying Paul Manafort. Right? Michael Flynn, doesn't really matter. He'll be forced to plea while Michael Sussman will get off for the same thing, the same crime. I mean, that's the same. It was a process crime. He didn't really do anything wrong. There was no, contrary to what Adam Schiff, who we're going to go into now, and others, contrary to what they said, General Flynn never really did anything wrong other than lie to the vice president. If you even want to call it that. Miscounting a certain detail when you're talking to an FBI agent who, not for nothing, what he really did wrong was trust that, he was a soldier for more than 3 decades. The head, he was the DNI, the Director of National Intelligence. He really did think those FBI agents were the good guys. He thought Peter Strzok and company were the good guys. He didn't know Peter Strzok was a scumbag having an extramarital affair with Lisa Page. Like, he didn't know that. Who believed it was his holy mission to prevent Donald Trump from having a presidency? He thought he was a G-man, so he must be a man of integrity. He must be the good guy. He must be on our side. So did KT McFarland. Read KT McFarland's book. Or don't even. Go back and look at the archives of the Don Smith show and watch his interview with KT McFarland. She will lay it out bare what they did to her. When she thought, these are the good guys. That's the real mistake they made, because they're not good guys. And women. So here we have Molly Hemingway reacting to Adam Schiff, who's officially been booted, along with Eric Swalwell, from the House Intelligence Committee. He was not booted from all committees, like Democrats did, by the way. They demanded certain Republicans not serve, not have any real key roles on any committees. They were all right with doing that. Republicans have not done that in kind. They have not responded in kind. But here is Adam Schiff whining like a baby and pretending this is political retribution by Kevin McCarthy and Republicans. And Molly Hemingway, again, who played a very critical role, all right, he says, first, Adam Schiff says, and let's go to his tweet first. First, he says, Kevin McCarthy just kicked me and Representative Swalwell off the Intelligence Committee. This is petty political payback for investigating Donald Trump. If he thinks this will stop me, he will soon find out just how wrong he is. I will always defend democracy. I will always defend democracy, he says. It's rich. It's super rich. All right. And Molly Hemingway says, and what did Dave say right there? Hold on. I just saw Viva. Matt Rooney says, smart move by Speaker McCarthy. Swalwell is a security threat and you're a liar. Viva Fry says, let's do a poll, shall we? Do you think Adam Schiff deserved to be kicked off the Intelligence Committee? There are over 49,000 votes in this poll. Look, I'm going to say yes. I'm entitled to my own opinion. All right. And let's see what it is. Oh, now, of course, that's informed by Viva's audience, which probably is pretty anti-Schiff. I mean, especially compared to considering how much Viva has done as a lawyer about Adam Schiff, because, of course, Viva is a law tuber, right? But we know he's covered Schiff's lies. I mean, there's no other way to put it. All right, so she wrote, Molly Hemingway, who of course is the editor at large for the Federalist and one of the key figures in exposing the Russia collusion hoax for what it was, which in fact was a hoax. But it's more than that, folks. It's worse than that. And that's why when we're talking about this arrest, I mean, the charge is not really what it should be, is it? Because as Molly has stated on numerous occasions, the misinformation campaign was a tool. You needed to wage that on the American people to make what the real plan, the central plan really was, which was to overthrow a duly elected president. This was a coup d'etat. That is the textbook definition. Adam Schiff, who for years falsely claimed to have evidence of collusion between Trump and Russia, and whose office is known for widespread leaking to support such partisan information operations, has been kicked off the Intel Committee. And before we do that, I want to go to Greenwald, what he said real quick. Hold on. I had it teed up before, but I lost it. So just bear with me while we click on it. He goes back, and I think he actually put one of the clips we're going to look at. But nope, this is his response. All right. Yes, Adam Schiff, that's the whole point. You're free to keep lying from other committees. What you can't do any longer is abuse your power as the House Intel Chair to leak to, and this, by the way, is a CNN congressional correspondent, all right, Manu Raju, and others, or impose the credibility of that position on blatant lies. And this is really what was the issue at large here. And what he's referring to, by the way, with that leaking to Manu Raju was always on always the recipient of Adam Schiff's leaks. That's why he earned the nickname the bathroom leaker, like myself and others called him that, because he blatantly got caught. It was a closed meeting. There was nobody who had the information with Trump Jr. There was closed session and other things that went on during Trump Jr.'s testimony. And this is just one of them. But as far as I know, Trump Jr. is the only one who spoke up like, hey, Adam Schiff is the leaker. There's the only one way somebody could have had that information. And Trump Jr. was right. Adam Schiff got up to take a break, to excuse himself, to go to the bathroom. And then miraculously, Manu had the information, and it was twisted the way that Schiff and Swalwell wanted the narrative to be. And you may remember that there was a big mistake regarding Trump Jr. with his reporting, claiming that in fact he had knowledge of the WikiLeaks dump and the content of it before it was made public. And it was a bombshell. Remember, it's a bombshell. Well, that's what Adam Schiff wanted everyone to believe. But of course, what Adam Schiff left out when he leaked to Manu is that Julian Assange himself had teased the leak and the contents of the leak in at least 2 interviews. But that's why Jr. and myself and others refer to him as the bathroom leaker, because this is what he did to Trump Jr. and others. This is supposed to be the man who's the head of the Intel Committee. And he is abusing his power, because when you have that position, you can say things like, I know something you don't know. Trust me. Whether it's true or not, doesn't really matter. I know something you don't know. There's evidence of collusion. There is? What is it? I can't get into it right now. But there's evidence. Trust me. Trump's a traitor. Remember this interview?
All you have right now is a circumstantial case.
Actually, no, Chuck. I can tell you that the case is more than that, and I can't go into the particulars, but there is more than circumstantial evidence now. So, again, I think...
So you have seen direct evidence of collusion?
I don't want to go into specifics, but I will say that there is evidence that is not circumstantial and is very much worthy of investigation. So that is what we ought to do. Now, again, I think...
Again, He did that on Chuck Todd. If you remember, him and Swalwell both made frequent appearances on Tucker Carlson at the beginning of the Trump administration around that period. And they never went back. Even though they gave their word as men, Tucker said, if you are wrong, do you promise to come back on the show and admit you are wrong? Because not for nothing, to accuse the newly duly elected president of the United States of treason is a pretty big deal. It's not something you should play politics with. If you are wrong, will you come back on the show and admit it? Oh, of course I will. Well, Eric Swalwell and Adam Schiff both stopped taking calls from the Tucker Carlson show from his producers. When the Nunes memo came out, what did he do? Did he go on Tucker? No. They released their own memo calling Nunes a liar when, of course, Devin Nunes was right. Because from the day Devin Nunes went into that skiff, what he saw was absolute abuse of power. He saw what, speaking of Don, Laura, how early was that call when Don Smith interviewed Donald Trump? Much earlier than anybody had suggested. You know, they had believed that the FBI was monitoring Trump and his team and using, peripheral members, unpaid peripheral members of the Trump campaign, essentially surrogates and supporters, to do what's called incidental intelligence collection of the president himself, the president-elect, the nominee, the front runner. That is when you get a FISA warrant to spy on somebody who has multiple degrees of separation from your actual target. Because you don't have enough to get a warrant to spy on your target. So you lie to the FISA court. You say, I need to spy on this guy, Carter Page. I need to open up a case against this guy, George Papadopoulos. Try to entrap him, by the way. Try to send honeypots. It's dirty. And the minute Nunes walked into that skiff, he could see it. He knew that's what was going on. And Schiff abused his power. As the ranking member of the Intelligence Committee, he had an ethics complaint launched against Devin Nunes, which took Nunes out of the picture for during a critical time. That Nunes needed that power as the chair to really uncover what truly happened and get it out there. Because I think it was clear to those who were in the know pretty early what the FBI had done. And that it was connected to listen, Maggie Haberman was feigning outrage when the Washington Post reported that the DNC and the Clinton campaign funded the dossier. She's pretending like her source, who was Adam Schiff, by the way, she's pretending her source didn't tell her that. Like she didn't know. That was a lie. It's a total lie. Of course she knew. She was copying and pasting what they wanted her to copy and paste. So that's what Dan did. That's what Delanian did. That's what they all just pushed crap. Somebody wrote before it was a CIA sock puppet. These people were Phoebe sock puppets. At that point, you cease being a journalist. You're no longer a journalist. You're an asset. They're not your source in the intelligence community. You're their asset. There's a big difference. And for at least 4 years, if not to this present day, there are a ton of people who have been duped so badly by this hoax, by this misinformation campaign, by this coup, that they no longer can distinguish between the two. And there's this huge part of a certain generation which is where they get to peel off some Republicans in this, particularly older Republicans, more established, moderate Republican, traditional. I hate using these phrases because the truth is, like the Romney, McCain, Graham, Bush wing of the Republican Party is not the traditional wing of the Republican Party. The traditional wing of the Republican Party has always been, historically, a more national focus, less war. That's been their platform. Working class, pro-family, that has been their traditional platform. These people were in charge of the Republican Party for a relatively tiny period in the grand scheme of the history of the party. They were able to ride Reagan's coattails, embed themselves like Alabama ticks into the Reagan movement, faking conservatism, faking little r republicanism, and they got the reins for a short period of time. They had it, but because George Bush lied, read my lips, no new taxes, because he wasn't a real conservative, he was defeated. They lost it to Clinton for 8 years. When George Bush beat Al Gore in what was a stunning upset, frankly, most people believed Al Gore was going to win that election. I did not. When George Bush beat him, did he beat him running as a pro-war neocon that he turned into later? No, he did not. George Bush repeatedly said on the campaign trail, we cannot be the world's policeman. He was rewarded for that with New Hampshire. At that time, a big anti-war state. Low tax, anti-war. But he lost New Hampshire in 2004, didn't he? He did, because he was a warmonger by that time. He had changed his stripes. And from that point up until Donald Trump, the Republican Party forgot who they were. They championed the Patriot Act. They championed 2 invasions. One having absolutely nothing to do with 9/11. They upset the balance of power in the Middle East. They filled their ranks with neocons like Paul Wolfowitz and Bill Kristol. They listened to people like Charles Krauthammer. Both liberals, by the way, the last 2. Charles Krauthammer was a liberal who hated Ronald Reagan. Hated him. George Will called his brand of republicanism kamikaze conservatism. This guy's a kamikaze conservative. He's nuts. He's going to wreck the Republican Party for a generation. George Bush called supply-side economics voodoo economics. What the hell is trickle-down economics? How does that work? You can't make it up. And they led to the creation of they just sat back while the FBI became the cesspool that it is now. You heard John Solomon talking about these crackpot rescue missions using oligarch funding Robert Mueller thought would be a good idea. The same Robert Mueller who thought like men should rot in jail for murders they didn't commit so he could cover for crooked FBI agents who were, bumping butts with Whitey Bulger. We got problems, folks. And yet, again, to go back to the central point here, no matter what I'm saying right now, there will be what you think to be educated, smart people who will be completely, it's either a refusal or an inability to recognize it, no matter what. All right, let's take a quick break and we'll come back and we'll look more at McCarthy, Zelensky, and then some polling, which I want to get into, even though it's like a world away. It really is. Polling right now, I want to get into it so I can get the baseline down. And I made some decisions about the direction of the survey and this culture war stuff we talked about on Friday, which was really good stuff. We're going to stick to, of course, the Registered Voter Economic Confidence Index. Well, we'll get back to that in a second. We'll talk about that after the break. All right, let's do a word from our sponsors here. All right. And of course, as always, thank you to them and thank you to you guys for supporting them, because you're smart enough to know that food shortages absolutely are a possibility. Yes, even in the United States of America. Drought, inflation, other weather, even new government policies, all pushing America's food supply near its breaking point. And that's why survival food is more important than ever. Do what Laura and I have done for our family and create your own stockpile of the best-selling 4 Patriots survival food kits. It's not ordinary food. We're talking about good for 25 years super survival food that's hand-packed right in a family-owned facility in the US of A. The kits come, they're compact, they're sturdy, they're water-resistant, and they stack easily. Simple totes, you can stuff them in a closet. They have different delicious breakfast, lunches, dinners. You can make these meals in less than 20 minutes. You just add boiling water, simmer it up, and serve it out to the fam. Go to 4patriots.com/TPP, obviously for the People's Pundit, to get your 3-month survival kit. You'll get their famous guarantee for an entire year after your order, plus 10 free gifts and free shipping. They're called 4 Patriots, folks, because a portion of every sale is donated to charities who support our veterans and their families. So go to 4patriots.com/TPP to build your own stockpile like Laura and I have done for our family today. While you're on there, by the way, and you want to go to there, that, again, I always say it's true. The People's Pundit deal for the 3-month kit is the best deal going. But if you want to go to their website and check out, because they have a lot of other great products, it's from me to you. I would wait to see what you get out of those 10 free gifts for free, because then all of those gifts are awesome. So you may want to buy something that you end up getting for a free gift because they change. All right. But later, go back, visit the website because they have a lot of other great stuff. And while you're there, use the promo code TPP10. TPP for the People's Pundit, TPP10 at checkout to get 10% off your entire site-wide order. All right. That's 4patriots.com/TPP. All right. And, like I said to Laura the other day, I always like just kind of reading them out, but I may cut a few, ahead of time. So in case I want to sip of water or something, just to let you know how it's going to go. And then other times I'll just do it, myself. But sometimes you need a sip of water, and I usually make you guys wait while I do it, right? Because you don't get it here. All right. Ooh, there's the 5% off coupon. All right. New guy in town who I love, by the way. Why? Because I'm 41. Right? You want to drop some of those leftover pandemic pounds? If you're like me, you have leftover pounds from the holidays, let alone the pandemic. But you're sick of all the ads for weight loss pills and fad diets. We've been there, Laura and I, we've done that. They don't work. You know what does? Eating 5 healthy servings of fruits and vegetables a day. Do that and the weight would probably fall right off. But, Rich, vegetables, I don't like them. And who has the time to prepare that every day? You guys are right about that. I'm very picky with vegetables, and even though we love to cook, there is no way to get that much in your actual diet that you really truly need metabolically from just your diet itself. And that's why I want to talk about Field of Greens. Field of Greens, science-backed formula, specific fruits and vegetables that you just won't find in any other product. Proper nutrition reboots your metabolism, so you burn calories faster and you lose weight in a healthier way. Field of Greens is the only brand that's backed by a better health promise. You'll look and feel healthier fast. But the greater proof comes at your next checkup when your doctor says, wow, what have you done to lose weight? Whatever you're doing, keep it up. Let's get you started today with 15% off your first order. Go to fieldofgreens.com, fieldofgreens.com, and use the promo code TPP for the People's Pundit, TPP. That's fieldofgreens.com, promo code TPP to get 15% off today. 15% off today. All right, we'll save the other read for after we discuss this, shall we? I think that's a great idea. All right, let's get to this. McCarthy fires back. I'm not ready to say I was wholly wrong about Kevin McCarthy because I believe I will be ultimately proved correct. But I will say this. I did admit right off the bat that he's not Paul Ryan because, well, for a few reasons. One, I think Paul Ryan's a crook. Like, always has been. Like, just like the TPP stuff for me just blew it out of the water. I have ideological differences with Trump on free trade. And then you go digging through Paul Ryan's receipts and you find very clearly that the people who were pushing TPP, I mean, some of these people, folks, in their combined efforts, spent billions of dollars trying to get TPP in all of these countries. They all back Paul Ryan, right? So he was full of crap. Let's be real. Any man who could look it right in the camera, tell Sean Hannity and all of his viewers, Hannity was a Trump cheerleader back then. So, he's really telling the Trump voter who got the Republicans the White House, the Senate, the House, full government. He's telling them lies, right? So Kevin McCarthy hasn't done that yet. And I got to tell you, I mean, I know people, and I'm not sure they want me to blow them up, but in Kevin's attempt to get the speaker gavel, he did reach out. He did. And you have to give him credit that he reached out to some of his biggest critics, some of whom he won over. It wasn't my place to win me, to win me over. That's like not my job. But I wouldn't be surprised because he didn't do what Ryan did. He said, this is what I think I can do. And if you support me, I will give you my word, I'll do it. And some people really took the measure of the man and said, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take your word at face value, even though they really had nothing else but his word. He got most of those rules packages through. He seems to be like personal friends of mine, folks, who hated the guy, all right, met with him. And he does seem to be trying to make good on the promises he made to these people. And these people, by all accounts, were like, look, Kevin, you screw me. You're going to hurt me. You're going to hurt my image. So you better understand, I will come after you with everything I got. You will not be speaker for long. And he was like, fair deals. Shake on it. And, it's up until this point, he's not acting like Paul Ryan. So you have to give the guy the benefit of the doubt and admit that maybe he's outperforming expectations on at least on some of that. Is he still not a great seller of the product? He's not. Does he represent the heart of the Republican Party? No, he does not. But at least he is trying to do that. And this interaction with the media he had over this Schiff Swalwell thing, you can't help but to look and say, because he has at least publicly, still giving, immediately after he finally got the last vote he needed, who did he thank? More than anybody. He thanked Donald Trump. And I can't help but to see the influence of Donald Trump in this press conference. This is not a 2014 Kevin McCarthy. This isn't even a 2016 Kevin McCarthy. That guy was a beta, man. The media would come at him at the microphone. That guy would cower. He's not doing that this time. He ripped Adam Schiff and Eric Swalwell off of the Intel Committee. It's a big deal, guys. He gave the House Freedom Caucus the Department of Homeland Security Committee. He gave, the Foreign Affairs, greater power on that. A slew of he gave these people his word and he came through. Now, again, I'm not on the McCarthy train here. I ultimately think I'm going to leave it up to the voters. I just won't be surprised, and we'll talk about polling in a bit, but congressional leadership favorability ratings definitely something we need to do for a myriad reasons. Number one, and not least of which, we have some new leaders here, right? We have new leader, right? And now we have a new speaker, right? Hakeem Jeffries and Kevin McCarthy, respectively. So we have to get those baselines. Nancy Pelosi's out. she ended with god-awful, very unfavorables. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Kevin McCarthy's image has improved. Because unlike Democrats, Republicans, their congressional leaders, their negative images have always come from their own voters not liking them. Whereas Democrats have always their negatives come from overwhelming negative sentiment among independents, and Republicans unified, I hate that SOB. So Republicans were different. Mitch McConnell's very total unfavorables come from very large shares of the Republican Party not liking him. It is rare for him to hit double digits among Republicans when we ask about very favorable. It is not uncommon to have Democrats slightly higher than Republicans on more than one occasion. We've had like 9-10% of Democrats say they have a very favorable opinion of Mitch McConnell, and like 6% of Republicans say the same. Kevin McCarthy could change his image around if he holds his promises. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's done that with some already. Maybe people like Chip Roy's constituents, right? Some Republicans in rural Georgia that didn't like him, maybe. Especially since some of their representatives have gotten behind him. Now, I don't expect to see this dramatic change. But what I will look for is whether or not there's any evidence of a reversal in trend at all. He's still generally had 25 to 30% of people say they had no opinion of him. So he had room to grow, but he was negative. But I want to know if this has changed. It used to be 35%. And as more people got to know Kevin McCarthy, the less they liked him. Has that changed at all? Where there's somewhat unfavorables who have now moved to somewhat favorable? Are there more people now that his image has been elevated who say, no, I do know who he is and I do have an opinion? All right, so we'll see. All right, but I want to take a second real quick. I got Neil. I see your message and I absolutely will. Thank you, Laura, for sending that to me. I hope you're still watching, James. Happy birthday. Make every day count because every day is a blessing. Thank you for watching the show. And I wish you all the best on your birthday. All right. And thank you for showing that to me, Laura. Another thing, Laura, because Laura's like, check your messages because I don't know. I get in the zone. So, Neil, I'm happy to do that. I'm glad that I did see that. And Laura will put something up against the thing. Like eventually she'll just write it on a thing and be like, look. And Joe Kent will be with us on February 1st at 12:30 Eastern Standard Time. All right, that was another one. Sojourner. I will have an update on that probably next week. And I don't know if I wanted to tell your question about everything. I don't know if I want to say it publicly yet, but you know what I'm talking about. And I will get an update from them on Friday. It looks like we have an appointment to talk on Friday. All right. So, well, Laura, I'm looking at like other things, you know. So, but Sojourner. I will speak with that particular outlet on Friday, and hopefully we have an update. Okay. I'm very much hoping that since we did very well on our generic ballot, better than basically everyone else, because it's not just that we came close to the overall popular vote. It's that we showed post-grads were really going to vote Republican by like 40%. We showed that 4 years were almost tied. Republicans did do better with college-educated groups. They did significantly better with certain non-white groups. It was the demographics that we showed. Their problem was that the electorate was not working class enough and it wasn't conservative enough. And part of that goes hand in hand. If more working class would have showed up and it would have been less educated, it's a midterm. That happens sometimes. But if more working class would have showed up, it would not have been 35% conservative, 36% conservative. That electorate could have been upwards of 42% conservative, and it was not. So that's something that definitely goes hand in hand. So look, Sojourner, I'll tell you what. I fully expect that conversation to go well. All right. Because face it, how much more can you do? Like, my misses are closer than most people's correct calls, right? So let's be real. So take Pennsylvania, for instance, right? So if you have Oz up within the sampling error, and then Fetterman wins within the sampling error by a very small margin, as was the case, it's more accurate than a poll that had Fetterman up outside of the sampling error. That's how statistics and polling really work. I think the public is a little bit confused on that. Joe Lombardo, absolutely nailed. We were not like others who had lax salt when we had them up. We did not have them up big. It was very close. And I think we all know what happened there. All right. So let's get real. We've now had 2 ahistoric events in elections, and the only common thread is you know what. So let's get real. And so we've been around here. Oh, right. Let's rock the McCarthy thing. You know, that's a good question, Evan. And I don't know if that's Evan asked, did the midterms point to Republicans making comebacks in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and the Atlanta burbs? And I'm not sure that's conclusive yet, because if you look at places in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, especially Fort Worth, outside of Fort Worth, Tarrant County out there, they did better. You know, the 12th, even though Democrats tried to expand vote by mail there, what happened is that a lot of people voted in person, and in person early. So I'm telling you, the best safeguard is high turnout. And that's all I'm saying. You know what I mean by that. And Republicans in Texas did that very well. Places like the Atlanta burbs, it did look like some Republicans were doing better, at least in that first round. But then the bottom fell out in the recall. So I'm not sure that's conclusive yet. And you could point to even places in North Carolina where Ted Budd certainly did much better than some Republicans in the past. However, I'm not sure that that's going to hold, because I think a couple of things happen there. There's still a much smaller urban vote in North Carolina than there is in Virginia, even Georgia, Arizona, where the urban vote in Arizona and Georgia is like 60+%. In North Carolina, it's still like 42. So, you know, I think what it does show, Evan, is that even with the comeback in a lot of these areas, which they did have, look at New York. They did do significantly better in certain areas of Virginia than anybody expected. It's not enough if you don't get the working class voter out too. It's not, even putting aside all the stuff that I don't want to get into, but I'm right there with you on. All right. So again, we can talk about the difference between Pennsylvania 5 and Virginia 10. The difference is drop boxes, not demographics, not education levels. The difference is drop box voting. So I'm right there with you on that. But the bottom line is Wexton held on because there wasn't that many working class. So Jennifer Wexton held on. Abigail Spanberger, who should have got crushed, she held on because, it was just too many educated people in the electorate. Even if Republicans wind up doing better in these areas, it's not going to be good enough. Glenn Youngkin drove mountain turnout and I don't know who that is, but Glenn Youngkin drove mountain turnout to a historically high percentage of the electorate, usually 16%. He got it to like 19, almost 20. And that elevated the percentage of conservatives in the electorate to, the highest since Bob McDonnell crushed his Democratic opponent in 2009, I believe. You may even have to go back further than that. That's a good question. It depends on there's definitely evidence of that in some areas, including in areas like Reno. They did much better. Clark County, they did significantly better. It's just not enough. There's a secret sauce there. It's like the Youngkin sauce. And DeSantis, I don't even think we could use that as an example, because DeSantis is not going to be a normal example. I think Florida, you will notice, I don't think it's a battleground state anymore. I don't. But it will tighten no matter who is the nominee. It doesn't matter if DeSantis is the nominee or Donald Trump is the nominee. In a presidential election, the partisan voting index will tighten. It will get more strict. What we refer to as it'll get more strict, and the margins will be smaller. Now, I think like somebody like a Nikki Haley could lose Florida. I do, because you're just not going to get the working class turnout in the forget about the traditional central or northern central areas of the state where we think of Republican rural or Republican voters. You need those working class Northeast transplants that are now in like Pinellas and Hillsborough to keep those margins at least tight, if not win Pinellas. And I don't think Nikki Haley would do that. I think she'd freaking lose it. I think it would be razor close, but she would lose it. I really do think that. So there we go. Yeah, she's not going to make. She would not be a good candidate. Not be a good candidate. And you're most welcome, Neil. I hope he heard it. Yeah, and Vince, that's what I'm talking about with Virginia. I mean, that's it. I think some of these, we're in the middle of something right now, and it's going to be tough to see. It's going to be tough to predict it going forward. I mean, predictions always are, but it's so uncertain because we have an entire party that doesn't really know its identity yet, which gets us back, by the way, to Kevin McCarthy, because I think if he continues this path, he's going to help the Republicans solve their identity crisis. I don't put much stock in politicians. So it's reason to be hopeful if you're a Republican. I just wouldn't turn your back on this guy for a second. That being said, this is not Paul Ryan. Let's run this clip and we'll talk about it. This is not Paul Ryan or John Boehner. It's not. Tell me you don't hear a Trumpian-like fight in his tone right here. All right. And I'm going to play the whole clip. It's kind of big, but it's not like, 8 minutes big. It's 3 minutes. I'm going to play the whole thing because of the combative back and forth and what he's willing to just say, which we talked about last week. Paul Ryan would never have done this. John Boehner sure as hell would not have done this. Let's rock it.
Intel committee. Is Santos on the Intel committee? Am I allowing Schiff to be on other committees? Go right ahead.
Because you have direct power over who goes on intelligence, but you also will be able to raise for your full House, taking off other Democrats, perhaps Representative Omar. But you have said that lying to us is something that means you should be removed from the intelligence committee. But why is it not a factor?
Well, let me be very.
This is a man who should not be on committee, something you do have power over.
He's got elected by his district, so. Okay, let me be very clear and respectful to you. You ask me a question. When I answer it, it's the answer to your question. You don't get to determine whether I answer your question or not, okay? In all respect. Thank you. No, let's answer her question. You just raised a question. I'm going to be very clear with you. The Intel Committee is different. You know why? Because what happens in the Intel Committee, you don't know. What happens in the Intel Committee, although the secrets are going on in the world, other members of Congress don't know. What did Adam Schiff do as the chairman of the Intel Committee? What Adam Schiff did, use his power as a chairman and lie to the American public. Even the Inspector General said it. When Devin Nunes put out a memo, he said it was false. When we had a laptop, he used it before an election to be politics and say that it was false and said it was the Russians. When he knew different, when he knew the intel, if you talk to John Radcliffe, DNI, he came out ahead of time and says there's no intel to prove that, and he used his position as chairman, knowing he has information the rest of America does not, and lied to the American public. When a whistleblower came forward, he said he did not know the individual, even though his staff had met with him and set it up. So no, he does not have a right to sit on that. But I will not be like Democrats and play politics with these, where they removed Republicans from committees and all committees. So yes, he can serve on a committee, but he will not serve on intel, because it goes to the national security of America. And I will always put them first, all right? And if you want to talk about Swalwell, let's talk about Swalwell, because you have not had the briefing that I had. I had the briefing and Nancy Pelosi had the briefing from the FBI. The FBI never came before this Congress to tell the leadership of this Congress that Eric Swalwell had a problem with a Chinese spy until he served on Intel. So it wasn't just us who were concerned about it. The FBI was concerned about putting a member of Congress on the Intel committee that has the right to see things that others don't because of his knowledge and relationship with a Chinese spy. They brought it to the works of the leaders. I've got that briefing. So I do not believe he should sit on that committee. And I believe there's 200 other Democrats that can serve on that committee. So this has nothing to do with Santos. Santos is not on the Intel committee. But you know what? Those voters elected Schiff, even though he lied. Those voters elected Swalwell, even though he lied to the American public too. So you know what? I'll respect his voters too, and they'll serve on committees, but they will not serve on a place of national security relevance because integrity matters to me. That's the answer to your question.
Holy moly. He eviscerated that reporter. Reporters. Because they tried their gang up. They're like Antifa, you know? They're like a bunch of like black tip reef sharks. None of them have the, you know, to borrow Ernest Hemingway, none of them have the cojones to like take a bite out of the shark, you know, the bigger shark themselves, but together they all get in this feeding frenzy like, you know, rabid animals and, you know, think they're tougher than they are. And he just wiped the floor with them. Let's be real here. And he did it with the facts. The man was spitting facts. Swalwell, let's talk about him first. Swalwell was not told about this until he ended up on the Intel committee. Everybody knows that is what these Chinese spy rings do. They put you in compromising positions and then wait for the tick to be punched. They find what they believe to be ambitious, less than moral character, but promising young politicians to get their hooks in, get their hooks around, or at least in Fang Fang's case, their legs, and then they cash in. Because at the very least, at the very worst, he knew what he was taking money from. He knew who he was literally sleeping with. And at the very best, he displayed a gross error in judgment, one that is so bad, you have no place on the Intelligence Committee. None. Because you think a Chinese spy ring will get you. What do you think the Intelligence Committee here will do to you? What about the next time you want to conduct legitimate oversight over a ridiculously powerful intelligence agency that is now run amok? And it is your job as the people's elected representative to protect them from them. So you go to rein them in. Not if they have pictures of you sleeping with a Chinese spy, you won't. Holy crap. It's unbelievable, frankly, unbelievable that Kevin McCarthy has to explain this to them. And it's not for their lack of brains, which obviously is a major problem in modern media. They're just that ideologically corrupt. They're willing to put you at risk as long as somebody they feel shares their vision of the country is in power. Bringing up Santos? Santos dressed in drag and lied about being, working on Wall Street. I'm not defending his misrepresentations. But nevertheless, the people of his district elected him. If they have a problem with him, they can defeat him in a year and a half, for crying out loud. Swalwell can sleep with a Chinese spy. Adam Schiff can lie about everything. Nancy Pelosi can make a fortune insider trading. But it's always been viewed by the Democrats as who cares? They win their districts. They're blue districts. They keep getting reelected. That's it. That's all there is to it. Lying now is what? A prerequisite? Or I would say not lying is a prerequisite for serving in the U.S. Congress? Well, then nobody would serve in U.S. Congress. Almost nobody. Because almost all of them are liars. What about the White House? I never spoke to my son about any of the dealings with Ukraine and China. There's a freaking war going on right now. We just signed a deal to give them M1 Abram tanks. Which, by the way, are not supposedly, according to everybody, not even going to make it for the immediate conflict. So I don't know why we would do that in the first place. Further poke the bear? Bang, bang. This needs no explanation. Here's again the chronicle we talked about the other day. Swalwell was completely cooperative and under no suspicion of wrongdoing, an anonymous source said. From the same agency that we had to open up this program with, who just arrested one of their own from taking money from a Russian oligarch who had a big hand in pushing the Russia collusion hoax. You have got to be kidding me. This is supposed to be what? Exonerating? It doesn't matter. It's too late. You can't write that shit. And again, let's look at what Kevin McCarthy actually wrote, because I want to drill into a few things. All right. This is Hakeem Jeffries, obviously. Dear Leader Jeffries, thank you for your letter dated January 21st, 2023 regarding Representatives Schiff and Swalwell. I appreciate the loyalty you have to your Democrat colleagues, and I acknowledge your efforts to have 2 members of Congress reinstated to the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. But I cannot put partisan loyalty ahead of national security, and I cannot simply recognize years of service as the sole criteria for membership on this essential committee. Integrity matters more, which he put in bold letters. As such, in order to maintain a standard worthy of this committee's responsibilities, I am hereby rejecting the appointments of Representative Adam Schiff and Representative Eric Swalwell to serve on the Intelligence Committee. It is my assessment that the misuse of this panel during the 116th and 117th Congresses severely undermine its primary national security and oversight missions. That is the point of this committee. It is not to get butt buddies with the administrative state to destroy your political opponents. The point of the committee is to protect the American people from dangers abroad and dangers within. Because these people are entrusted with an enormous amount of power. And if they abuse it, we're in deep trouble. And you would have someone with such low character as Adam Schiff and Eric Swalwell. One compromise, at least one compromised, if not both. I don't know what you call rubbing elbows with Ukrainian arms dealers. Like, what is that? Ultimately leaving our nation less safe. Therefore, as we enter a new Congress, I'm committed to returning the Intelligence Committee to one of genuine honesty and credibility that regains the trust of the American people. That therein lies another problem. Nobody trusts them anymore. In their critical function, nobody trusts them. They don't trust the agencies, and they don't trust the elected representatives to rein in these agencies if and when necessary. And believe me, it is necessary right now. Adam Schiff lied to have the sitting chairman of the committee, then Devin Nunes, removed during a frivolous ethics investigation that they started. He lied about the whistleblower that was used to impeach the president. He lied about there being more than circumstantial evidence of Russia collusion between Donald Trump, the Trump campaign, and the Russians. Are you freaking kidding me? Democrats did not afford, like he pointed out, Republicans the same courtesy. Jim Banks was tossed off the January 6th select committee and was never even given a reason. Nancy Pelosi just threw him off. Glenn Greenwald writes, listing all of Adam Schiff's major lies would require a book, but there's no refuting one fact. Before the 2020 election, this is a whole other lie. He abused his authority as the chair of House Intel to endorse a knowing lie. The Biden laptop was Russian disinformation. That alone justifies his removal. Oh, amen to that, brother. Again, this goes to the heart of what we're just talking about. He knew that was a lie. His job, and here they are, run amok. Powerful intelligence agencies, officials holding powerful roles in those agencies, patently lying, not even patent, bald-faced lying to the American public. Now laughing about it. The New York Post just quoted one of them. Oh, yeah, we knew we were lying. We don't care. It worked, didn't it? As chairman of that committee, his role is to punish them. That was abuse of power. Instead, he lifted the sheets and got right in bed with them. Told you all lies about something so dangerous as what is on that laptop. You want to talk about compromising positions? Knowing what the Chinese know about Hunter Biden? How on earth would you think that Joe Biden would have any freedom unless he wants the Chinese picking up the phones to all of their contacts in the media, law enforcement agencies, international law enforcement agencies, and demanding they all do something about Hunter Biden in what appears to be underage girls, prostitutes. Bribery, extortion, laundering. He can't. The president is, that's why I always hated how Hannity and others went after Hunter Biden's addictions. You don't know anybody who's addicted? Is suffering with addiction or has suffered with addiction? That's what you have to talk about? You know how I feel about that. Oh, you're a bigger man than me then. Yeah, right. A bigger man can fight that every day. You choose to put an audio clip of a desperate father, anyone who's got a family member who's, suffering from addiction. I mean, anyone who would hear what I heard, which is a father who's at the end of his rope because he doesn't know what to do with the son that he loves. That's not the story. The story is he's compromised. The story is you used what kind of a man, uses his son battling with mental illnesses and drug addictions as a bag boy, a go-between for crooked business dealings, selling political favors. That's the story. How they have your son to the wall, man, with dirty deeds. Addiction. Focus on addiction. How freaking stupid are these people? How out of touch do they sound? The entire Midwest was routed by pain pill abuse. Southeastern Ohio. Come on. A lot of places in Ohio. Drug addiction was a major problem. How did J.D. Vance Anybody read Hillbilly Elegy? Yeah, no kidding. I mean, it's so out of touch. It's so out of touch. I do think, Evan, if the current patterns were to hold, it is possible that Florida will continue to vote to the right of Texas. Even it is possible, yes, because you have Texas Hispanics are moving in the direction of Republicans, but not as fast as Florida Hispanics. And then that's a really good question. And then also state to state migration, I would argue is very clear. It's benefiting Florida Republicans more than it's benefiting Texas Republicans, although recent movers are voting Republican in Texas by majority. They're not doing it in the margins that recent movers to Florida are. All right, that's a really good question, but as of right now, I think it is possible. And then also too, whites in Florida vote more Republican than whites in Texas, and that never was the case for a while. But it has. It did this time. I don't know if that'll continue. We shall see. All right. Yeah, it's flip-flop depending on the election. But Cruz in his first run for Senate, he did very well with Hispanics. Trump in 2020, incredibly well with Texas Hispanics. Same thing. So I do think, though, that Florida seems to have Florida Republicans seem to have an easier path, and that there's in Texas that are going to be thorns in the sides of Republicans for a while. Florida does not have urban areas, like a lot of these other states have. Not that many. And even what is considered an urban area is usually encased, like Gainesville, is usually encased with a red wall around it. So Republicans can get to 40%. Miami-Dade, look, that's the biggest urban area, and it's now Republican. So Broward County shifted to the right significantly. You're just not looking at ghetto urban areas like you have in some of these other places. All right. And the population share is not as big. But that's a really, really good question. All right. Let's see. I do want to leave some time for polling here. So let's get rid of this. Kick this. Let's do our last one. Let's do our last word from our sponsor, and then we will talk about. I want to get at least 2 polls that we're talking about, and then roll it into what we want to do with the poly polling project, which again I forgot to put as the front form, but rest assured, because I do see some of you contributing to the project that's up there. I mean, why would you? But why would you not? But let me I'll do it on this break. Actually, I will get the link for the other one because it's almost got no contributions. Almost all the contributions so far have gone to the old form. So I'll get it right now. Laura, I'm going to give it to you if you would kindly, pass it around. And again, I know how times are. I'm realistic here, folks. I know how times are, and I'm doing everything I can to keep it down. And I'm also doing everything I can to try to get some consistent people who, you have the option of reoccurring. The new one, the one that's actually the one they're supposed to be using, doesn't have any. The others that were not fully funded, but I did anyway, they've gotten those contributions. So here, Laura, let me put this I'll put it in the chat for you. That is the post-midterm national survey. And we'll talk after this read what we're going to do with that. But some of the nomination polling, I would very much like to get our first one on because I think it's a little bit all over the place. We're going to take a look at a few different versions of reality. It eventually will be the decider on what we believe. But it's very far out. The nominations are a lifetime away in politics. And again, I do know how the economy is right now. So, I get it. But the last time it did look like this, the deal. The spiel. The stock market tanked, lost half its value. The U.S. dollar, 46% of its value. Oil quadrupled. And yet, while the U.S. economy collapsed and inflation ran through the roof, gold shot up 1,300%. Silver rocketed over 2,400%. So if history repeats itself, we could see it happen again. You can't afford to miss out on what could be the biggest opportunity of our generation. And that's why I want you to visit tpplikesgold.com, tpplikesgold.com, because when you do, you'll not only get the chance to protect your retirement savings with gold and silver, you could get 10 grand or more in free silver just for doing it. This is a rare opportunity, and I always have no problem saying it myself. Our offer was like 6%, depends on what you do. So don't 6% over. So you will get an additional 6% if you buy X number of silver. The offer for me was we're going to give you 6% more. So don't miss what could be your best opportunity to protect your retirement savings. Visit tpplikesgold.com. That's tpplikesgold.com. And actually, I'll tell you right now, again, and as always, TPP likes silver right now. The link is TPP likes gold, but silver, I think, has, I don't want to be giving recos, but I do want to give you my personal opinion. You do your research, but I think silver has a lot more upside potential right now, and platinum as well, but platinum is more expensive. All right. So keep that in mind. All right. But GOLDCO, great company. I've known them for a while, and I don't talk to you guys about anything I'm not personally familiar with. All right, where is this last one? So we have Emerson's new poll. There is 2 worlds here, and I am going to tell you which world I tend to believe more. Okay, Emerson's job approval for Joe Biden has gone up quite a bit. All right, and I want to show you what it is. And also Rasmussen also had a bump. I'm curious of whether or not we will find that as well. Of course, we are going to have Joe Biden's approval, his latest approval. All right. So, I'm just on Twitter right now because I don't see the point on getting the whole thing up here. This will serve its purpose. But Emerson has Joe Biden now bouncing all the way up from 39 during the midterms to 44. And his disapproval, which was a high in their polling of 53 to 48. We always had Biden's disapproval a little bit higher. I think the electorate clearly showed that it was higher than, Emerson suggests, because of who is also missing in the electorate, which would have been less favorable to Biden, which would have pushed it, closer to seriously 56%. But I'm curious. It is possible for when a president's party does better than expected in midterms for their approval to rise. That's also true if they were reelected. It did happen with Obama, even though he did not have a good midterm. Boy, if you're Obama, it really must burn your ass that you have to deal with this charade, that you have to pretend like this is legit or something. It must bother him really bad, especially since the truth is he can't stand Joe Biden. He thinks Joe Biden's a blundering idiot who the American people don't like. So you got to wonder when Barack Obama looks in the mirror, he must be a rabid ideologue to go over this, to go along with this without it really chafing, Anyway, let's take a look first here too. So that's it. That's Biden's approval. So I thought that was interesting. Why? Why am I saying I think it's interesting? You have some of these polls like Morning Consult showing different dynamics here, okay? Whereas you have Emerson and Harris, which tended to look a lot more like our polling, and I'm so curious to see what we find, showing something else. What do I mean by that? They show Trump in a more dominant position in the rematch than DeSantis against Joe Biden. I'm very, 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 and I'm not talking about the ultimate outcome or what polling will look like 6 or 8 months from now, but I am very skeptical of polls that show Ron DeSantis doing better than Trump, and I'm going to find out whether we do or not against Joe Biden, because even though he is the governor of Florida and now he's in his second term, there are a lot of people, folks, who will choose someone else because they're not familiar with Ron DeSantis. He doesn't have the name recognition that Joe Biden and Donald Trump have. He just doesn't. All right? I mean, it's just true. So you might think, well, a generic guy, Rich, would do better. That's not generally the case. You would have to just say the generic Republican candidate. Once you name someone, you put a name to it, it influences how people respond. All right. So I'm not saying that'll be the truth, 6 months from now. But I think that right now, some of these polls that show DeSantis doing so well, there are some major problems with them. One of them I'm going to show you in a minute. One of them is the biggest major problem I'm seeing is that they're entirely too educated. That's number one. They're way too educated for a Republican primary, and and basically, it's not going to look like that. It's just not. And when you look at how the breakdown of by education, Trump's dominance with non-college whites is still basically mathematically impossible to overcome. I mean, that's just I'm not saying it's going to stay forever. I'm just saying as of right now, that is the case. And these are the very voters who are going to tell you they don't really know who Ron DeSantis is. All right. So my own father was like, how is that possible, Rich? When I had showed him some things we did on DeSantis, I'm like, Pop, he's your governor. Of course, you know who he is. He's like, how the hell does 16% say they don't know him? Because Americans aren't political junkies like we are. And he's your governor. So you know him and love him, by the way. But it's difficult for us to realize how other Americans are, which is just not glued to the screen 24/7. So that's one. And then being too educated is a telltale sign of another problem. Look at Morning Consult, for instance, and others. I think what you're looking at with some of these other polls, especially live caller polls, which Morning Consult is not, but some of the big media live caller only polls, you're getting very, very high interest voters. Those voters will be more informed, but they're not necessarily representative of the electorate. Okay, so especially this early, you don't even know what it's going to shape up to be yet. That's why we need a baseline. I mean, believe me, I wouldn't be shocked either way. I really would not. I wouldn't be shocked to see if we find the opposite is the case. But what we're going to do is the registered voter. You know what? Before we go into what we're going to do, it's 150. Let me show you the example of a poll somebody had sent to me. This is textbook of what I've seen. Harvard-Harris, by the way, is another one. Did very well. Did not do a bad job this year. Did a pretty good job. Or last year, excuse me. And they have generally been in line with our approvals for Biden. They've generally have been in line with our rematch numbers. All right. And so that's why when I look at some of these polls, and Emerson's been a little bit more favorable, I think, to Biden than us. It's not even a matter of favorable. They just find lower negatives, higher positives. And I think I know why that is. I think it's because of the contact method. But when you look at the Harvard-Harris poll, you'll see, I mean, I can't tell you how many calls I got from DeSantis supporters saying, this poll's bull. It was just recent. Twice in a row now, Harvard-Harris has shown that actually Trump does better against Biden. And people who want DeSantis to run call me and they'll say, this is crap. And then when somebody has a poll that shows DeSantis doing better, Trump supporters call me and say, this is crap, right? I mean, they all do, right? I can't wait to find out myself because I'm going to believe my own data over everybody else's. I'm just saying recently, I think Emerson's been pretty close, a little bit more D-leaning, except for the state polls. They were really are leaning. I think they had Laxalt winning by like 5 points or something, which I could see. I could see how they found that. Laxalt's lead with independents was huge in the polling. I don't know. Yeah, I do know. You know too, but we don't have to get into it. But check out this poll, for instance, which is the flip side of this. Trump's doing his first campaign stop on the State House in Columbia. I think it was, is it? Yeah, I don't know. Columbia. I don't know where he's going, but it's an urban area, which is smart because Trump has support. And I saw one of the polls said, how did Trump outperform in our polling all these other candidates? And I've told them as much. This is true. He does better in urban areas. So there are urban voters who, I know it sounds crazy, but think about the number of votes he got in urban areas in 2020. It was amazing. Very, very impressive. It's just that, the mail came in more. But had he done that kind of performance against Hillary Clinton, oh my God, it would have been a bloodbath. He would have decimated Hillary Clinton. He would have carried easily New Hampshire and Minnesota, but he would have carried Pennsylvania by like 2.5 points, 3 points. He would have carried, or more maybe, because urban votes, man, it's a big chunk. He would have carried Georgia by like 6, 7. I mean, Nevada, he significantly we had Lombardo up, 1.6? I got to go back and look, but it was like 1.6, and Lombardo was doing well in Clark County. But Trump was winning Clark County, which sounds crazy, I know, but Laxalt barely lost Clark County. Lombardo did even better. He lost it by like 4 points. Trump was winning Clark County in our polling. So it's smart of him to go to places like Charleston and Columbia, go to Clark, go to Atlanta. Don't worry, and I'm not saying don't worry about driving out your own vote, because you have to, but there are big chunks of voters that he could appeal to in these urban centers. And they're not educated, as you think. I hate, again, using that word, because I know a lot of educated people who are stupid. And I know a lot of people who don't have college degrees who are sharp as a whip. So I hate using that phrase. But let's look at this poll from South Carolina somebody showed me, and this is a textbook example of what I'm talking about. First of all, 300 plus voters for a Republican primary is way too small of a sample. A sample size overall of 636 statewide, you cannot break down into, those days are over. We used to see polls like that in like 2012. I thought it was very clear by now that you needed a much larger sample size. There has to be minimal sample sizes. You have to get your sampling error down to at least 3%, 3.1. This is too small. But when you look into it, we don't know some of this information because they're not sharing it. So with our polling, you would know, okay, it's this much college educated. How many of the subgroup of Republican primary voters are educated? You would know that in our polling because our crosstabs would show you that, right? How many are Democrat? If, by the way, we always release detailed methodology statements that give samples, subsamples, and representation. So you would be able to look at least at that. They're trying to do that here. This is the frequency, meaning the count of responses from these groups. And this is the percent. For the entire 636 sample size, ladies and gentlemen, master's or professional degree, 16%. Doctoral, a PhD, or an MD, over 3%. So combining them, you're looking at 20% of the electorate in South Carolina having more than a 4-year degree. 20%. That's a lot. In addition to that, 23.3% with a bachelor degree. Notice that they actually separated some college and associate, whereas we put it together because that's what exit polls do. So when you're looking at not only exit polls, but voter file does this. When you're looking at how do I know whether or not I'm right about these subgroups, they don't distinguish between the two. So you have to give them that choice together. That's always been our experience. All right. So overall, this is nearly half of the electorate with at least a 4-year degree. Over 40%. About 43, we'll just round. About 43%. That's a lot for the state of South Carolina. More so, how do we know if this isn't lopsided to the Republican vote that they have, which the subgroup for Republicans is only 300 and something. That's it. How do we know? We don't. We don't know what that percentage is. So, color me skeptical. I would not put out a nomination poll with 300 Republican primary voters. I just wouldn't do it. We're at the point now, you could get 1,000 from each of these states, these critical states. I can almost squeeze 1,000 out of New Hampshire. I mean, that really is what needs to be done when you're trying to look at this stuff in great detail. You cannot get granular when your count gets down to 22. What if 11 out of this 22 are Republican primary voters? Well, then you got a serious problem, right? What if 50% of 50 or 45 of these in the associate degree column are Democrats? Then you have a problem. Because this down is a good group for not only Republicans, but the MAGA wing of the Republican Party. If it's not representative, you're gonna be way off. 16% high school or graduated high school graduate or GED, another 4% less than high school, another 8% technical or vocational degree. So you're looking at like 28% working class. I gotta tell you. And again, where did you pull them from? We just don't know. Yeah, and bass player 2011 IFY. I just wanted to tell you, I just wanted to add to what you're saying there because absolutely true. Horry County is Trump country. You know, so did you get by region? Did you get a representative sample by education and region, nesting them? So if you got way too many from Northeast South Carolina that are educated Republicans, you're going to misrepresent who actually votes there. All right. It's just true. And which is why, you know, larger samples are better. So again, color me skeptical. I'm very skeptical on that. And I'm not sure that states at this point matter all that much. I really don't. I'm not sure that national trends at this point. Yeah, we are kicking it into gear soon once, and you got Trump campaigning. Oh, and by the way, it's a head-to-head poll. It's not going to be head-to-head. Why did they do that? It's a third contest. Iowa caucuses, New Hampshire primary, South Carolina primary. You think it's going to be head-to-head by the time they get to state number 3? When was the last time that happened in a Republican primary? Right. They tend to fight it out for a while in modern examples when there wasn't a coronation like there was for like Herbert Walker Bush. At this point, Evan, I think we can expect turnout to at least be the same as 20, if not a little bit higher, because we have a lot of newly naturalized people. So, yeah. And Sue, you know, last comment here because we're at 2 o'clock, but we know what happened. Washoe, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, economics is still relevant, how it's just fewer people for sure. I think that we've entered, this is why I want to talk more in the future about what we started talking about today. Like, how could you possibly even require an explanation for Kevin McCarthy to remove those 2 men from that committee? Well, because I don't want to use the phrase brainwashed, but it is a hive mind, and fewer people are willing to break from the hive. And, you know, because of certain, how could I put it, economic reasons. And they may even incorrectly blame, like, I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but I've thought about expanding some of this work to just figure out, because I was looking back at some of it, stupid questions like, what party holds this position? You'd be so shocked at how many people don't know simple answers to these questions. Like, you would absolutely believe it's history. You would know. We talk about it all the time. You would know, and yet so many people don't know. All they know is that construct that's been made for them. And they're going to vote in that construct until it's broken. And I'm not sure the best way, for some of them anyway, to break it. We talked a little bit of the difference between ignorance and stupidity last week. Ignorance is when you just don't know better, but if you learn, if you're told, you'll learn and you'll know better. Stupidity is it just doesn't matter. You could be taught and still incapable of understanding it, right? Geraldo, great example when we talk about the Second Amendment. But there's something else here. These are not stupid people. They're stuck in the cave, the allegory of the cave. And you could be, forget about tapping them on the shoulder. Dude, turn around. Turn around, lady. Turn around, dude. That's not real. This guy back here is doing it. Forget about tapping him on the shoulder. You could give him a Charlie horse or a dead arm. Wake up! Look behind you! And otherwise intelligent people just refuse. They don't want to look. It's easier to think the shadows on the walls are real, because then it forces them to confront these belief systems that they have spent their lives coddling and protecting as they built them, as they were constructed for them. My professor wouldn't have lied to me. These people wouldn't have lied to me. Yeah. I mean, how do you tell a 28-year-old African-American man who's adores, the matriarchs of his family, that the Republican Party was not the party of the KKK, because his aunts had been telling him for years that they were? Like, how do you tell him that? How does he confront that information? When he thinks the world of his own community. That's just one example. How do you get a white yuppie woman, bear with me, to grasp the reality, even barbarism, of the modern of the modern position on the Democratic Party toward abortion, late-term abortion? How do you get her to comprehend it? Like, she was told it was just a fetus at 5 months old. It's not a baby yet until it's giving birth. I mean, you're talking about these like really deeply held beliefs that we use to protect ourselves and shield ourselves. And you got to shatter them. And then you're shattering their worldview. And a lot of people, especially in this day and age, unfortunately, because our lack of mental stability, or the lack of mental health stability, it's a mass problem, make no mistake. And because, frankly, of our moral decay, I mean, character-wise, it's just true. We're not able to always admit we're wrong. And it's tough. It's a tough hill to climb. It really is. But that's all what I want to explore more, because I'm really shocked by some of these answers. Which party do you, based on what you've heard and seen or read about, and you give them all the list, which party do you think believes that you should have choice for your child's education as a parent? Well, Democrats. No. Right? So which party do you believe, is more closely associated with fascism, which of course is a big government ideology? Republicans. Oh, really? Republicans believe in limited government. What are you talking about? They got it all twisted up, and that is to the great credit of the information cartel. or the information wing of the cartel, much to their credit. Which is why they lost their you-know-what in 16. And I've said this once, I'll say it a million times more from now until my death. The real lesson they learned in 16 was we can never lose control of the flow of information again. We did, briefly. We lost control of their minds. Can't ever happen again, no matter what. All right, so with that, good stuff, guys. Good stuff. Great questions. Great talk. I love. I'm reading from locals to Rumble to YouTube, Getter, and you guys really you were on it today. Absolutely on it today. All right. So again, let's not forget to thank our sponsors, which are fieldofgreens.com. Fieldofgreens.com. Don't forget to use the promo code TPP. Get started on 15% off today. You will not regret it. I certainly have not myself. And of course, forpatriots.com/TPP. Get your 3-month survival kit. Or if you're just cruising their website, like I said, though, seriously, if you're going to get the 3-month kit, you should see what you get with those 10 free gifts, because you may just get something you were thinking about buying. I'm serious. But if you've already done that, or you're just going to go and pick out what you want, TPP10, use the promo code TPP10 on their website to get 10% off. And of course, our good friends at GOLDCO, TPPlikesGold.com. That's TPPlikesGold.com. They have some great offers right now. And remember, TPP likes silver. And so do they. GOLDCO, they'll tell you that they'll be real with you, which is what I love about them. And thank you all for joining the show. We will see you Friday. Locals, you will get the report now that it's generated. Thank the Lord. You'll get it today. And we'll go over more with polling, like Laura said, Joe Kent next week. And we'll let you know as soon as we hammer it out what we're going to do here with the new schedule. All right. It will be, I like my 12 o'clock hour. I'm just talking about, I don't know if we're going to do one more day or a few more days with less showtime. I don't know, but the content is out there. So I'm going to basically do a mock week in my head and see how it would have went and then see what's the best way to do it. But I think we need more shows. All right. And I love doing them, frankly. There'll be plenty of time to bury me in private polling data later. All right. So right now, and I see you, Sue. I see you. On a schedule, I know, and I'd have to hammer this out to figure that out, because I know when I do a live thing on locals, I just kind of jump on and take you guys by surprise. I know I'm on it, Sue. I'm on it. All right. Thank you for bearing with me. Then I'll be like, all right, now's a good time. The kids are not, not a bother. I don't have a call with so and so, and I'll just do it. I'll just jump on. I'm gonna try to deal with that in a little bit better organized fashion. All right, as always, guys, thanks, and I will see you Friday. Don't forget, noon Eastern Standard Time, freewheeling, and we'll at the very least, go over some of the questionnaire and get ready to begin to launch this puppy. All right, and like I said, I'll give you a little preview right now. The Registered Voter Economic Confidence Index, of course, Biden's approval rating, the new congressional favorability ratings, and the 2024 nomination. And then on top of that, a separate section with the new culture wars. And I think there's one question from last year's public polling project we said we were going to do annually. I have to go back and look at it. It may be the Civil War lineup, right? I think it is. But I'll find out. We'll go back into the archives. We'll find out what we asked in that first winter survey from last year. And we'll get our annual reading on that. All right. All right. So we'll do all that Friday. Stay tuned as always. Thanks for joining Inside the Numbers. Share far and wide. Love you guys. See you soon. Uses, Laura said.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but you don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. like a single day.